was this constitutional amendment that Ibram Kendi proposed. Maybe we should start off by, Monique, you can tell us who Kendi is. Like, what's his jam?
He's an anti-racist. He wrote the book. I think he wrote Stamped, and he wrote How to Be an Anti-Racist. I want to say he's a sociologist, but I don't think so. I know he has his PhD, but I'm not sure what he has.
But a lot of pastors are recommending this book right now. Mm-hmm. And so we've had a lot of people write into the ministry asking us, like, what's our opinion on this book? And then there was this thing on Politico. Is that what it was? You have the Politico piece? Yeah, there is. Politico, yeah. Yeah. So he has this, he wants to pass an anti-racist constitutional amendment. So, Monique, why don't you tell us what anti-racism is? Because we had somebody just on Facebook yesterday say, that sounds like a good idea. I want to be an anti-racist.
Well, it's the idea that and Carrie, you can come on in and, shoot some wisdom too. It's not just that being not a racist isn't good. That's not good enough. Like, it's not just good enough to love people. You actually need to be doing anti-racist work. So you need to be doing the work of actively dismantling systems that oppress people of color, reading books that speak out against anti-racism or about racism or oppression or systemic injustice. Things like White Fragility or How to Be an Anti-Racist and things like that, like constantly learning about, if you're white, how you are part of this oppressive cycle. It's this constant work. Being an anti-racist is just the work of speaking out against oppression and marginalization of people of color.
So it's a technical term that is part of the critical race theory framework. I always tell people, it doesn't mean what you think it means.
Yes.
It doesn't mean, well, I just want to be a good person and I'm not going to burn crosses on my neighbor's lawn.
Please don't burn crosses on your neighbor's lawn. That's horrible. But I also think, though, and would say that it isn't, when you go back to the original idea of critical race theory with like Derek Bell, like back in the late 80s. Mm-hmm. The term anti-racism, you're not going to find that like in the tenets, right. But you will find the idea of anti-racism in the tenets. Like there's the idea versus the terminology, like the actual word itself.
Okay. So now Kendi is kind of this modern day anti-racist prophet in our culture right now, this big voice that's speaking out for anti-racism.
Currently he and Robin DiAngelo are like the king and queen of this ideology.
And from a Christian perspective, it would be Jemar Tisby.
Okay.
And Robin DiAngelo.
Okay.
But the three, I would say, you're right. Like it's on, like they're just right there.
Okay. So now let's go to the Politico piece here. He wants to pass an anti-racist constitutional amendment to fix the original sin of racism. And so he wants to set up the Department of Anti-Racism. So he wants to make it unconstitutional for racial equality. Let's scroll down here a little bit. So that all local, state, and federal public policies would be ensured that they won't yield a racial inequity. And that there would be disciplinary tools to wield over and against policymakers and public officials. So all I could think of when I read this was, wow, I'm really glad the founding fathers made it so difficult to amend the Constitution, because this is a crazy idea. So then, Carrie, you tweeted out this. See, Bob's there it is. Anti-racism is racism. I want to break that down. This is Orwellian newspeak. The Ministry of Truth, anyone, these SJW racists need to start being shunned the way we shun the KKK and not taken seriously and pushed back to the fringe where they belong. So tell us a little bit about this tweet and what you were thinking here.
Yeah. What I was thinking is that I never get asked to distance myself from people who push social justice ideology. It's not treated the same way as white supremacy or misogyny. It's actually it's currently culturally endorsed and celebrated and pushed on us. And I really think we need to start, like I said, start treating it the same way that we treat racism coming from white supremacists, and that this guy should not be given $10 million from one of the biggest social media companies. His book is currently on the New York Times bestseller list. Same thing with Robin DiAngelo. These guys their ideas are being culturally elevated instead of maligned and mocked the way that we rightfully malign and mock KKK members. And I do think there was an additional tweet where I said, I do think it's possible to treat the people that who are in this ideology with empathy and to pull them out of it the same way that Daryl Davis, Daryl Davis is the black guy who's pulled over 200 white KKK members out of the Klan just by befriending them, by being that soft place for them to land, right? And by being open to them. And I think you can do the same thing with social justice people, but you don't do it by saying the ideas are okay. You don't do it by, as a culture, elevating and celebrating the beliefs and making it something to aspire to. We are so far from where we need to be in terms of how we treat this belief system, in my opinion. So when I say at the beginning, I'll back up. When I say anti-racism is their word for racism, if you look at what they're telling you to do, they're telling you must treat people differently on the basis of race and also sex and everything. But they're telling you must do that. And that's racist. I don't care if you redefine the term. And philosophically, it's like you can't be down with that because you don't know where it leads. If you think back to, they like to talk about Hitler and Nazis a lot. Okay, well, think back to Hitler. Hitler gave speeches about social justice. This is something I learned from actually a Christian blogger, Samuel Say. Mm-hmm. If you guys are familiar with him.
Yeah, he's been on our show a few times.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
I really dig talking to him.
Yeah.
He was kind enough to come on once. So he wrote this essay about social justice in the gospel. And he put some stuff in there from Hitler's speeches I had never read where he talked about social justice by name. And he also said things that if you just took Jew out and replaced it with white man, it would sound like what you hear today. But it was basically like, this is a privileged group that has oppressed us, and that, the way to combat this privilege and systemic bias is, it was all the same stuff. Well, where did that lead? And I bet at the time, if you had said, wow, this is wrong, this is racist to be talking about Jewish people this way, there would have been maybe little you could point to in history to say that this could lead somewhere bad at the time. It could, but Jewish people own all these businesses and they're, at this elevated place supposedly in society. How could anything go philosophically it's bad and it has the potential to lead somewhere very bad. And in that case it did.